The FNAF DLC is fast approaching. Kind of. Maybe. But the question we're all left asking is, what exactly will this DLC entail? Will there even be a DLC? At this point, when it comes to FNAF, we have no idea. Mostly because the series is in an incredibly weird place currently. With seemingly no official successor after Scott, where could Steel Wool take the story to have it make more sense? And will that direction involve the game's secret main antagonist, Burntrap? That's what we're exploring today. Just like with any of these possible DLC videos, whether it be about the Choose Your Guardian concept or Glamrock Bonnie's return, we first need to check to see how possible it is with where we end up at the end of the game. Well, as far as we can, since the PizzaPlex, or at least part of it, seemingly gets destroyed at the end of the true ending. So, when we choose to stay, is it possible for Burntrap to have more of an impact? Well, it's not as clear as you might think. See, Burntrap at this moment is sat in the FNAF 6 pizzeria that's underneath the PizzaPlex, charging in his charging station. However, he only seems to come out of it when ourselves along with Gregory jump down into the final area. So to make this DLC possible, well, we would have to have him wake up for some other reason. Now technically it's unknown if when we drop down Afton ironically wakes up at the same time or if we triggered it somehow, but given that it's FNAF, I'm guessing that us triggering it is more probable and more in line with what the series story was intended to be. So for this DLC to include him, Afton would need to wake up for some other reason, be it maybe a power surge or something that messed with his power supply or potentially gave him a boost that he needed to get out of the charger early. Now that Afton is out of his charger for whatever reason, assuming that that's where the story goes, what could the possible DLC stories be? Well, I'm guessing that Burntrap would somehow be able to get back into the PizzaPlex, despite Freddy telling Gregory that the elevator would only be good for one trip. But who knows, maybe that's because of Gregory and Freddy's weight combined or something like that. Maybe with just Afton in it, it would be able to make more than one trip, since after all it is how the animatronics were getting down to dig the tunnel in the first place, right? Anyways, Afton probably would get back up and then start roaming around the PizzaPlex, probably corrupting anything that he could. This would probably lead to another ending where we would either defeat Burntrap in the PizzaPlex or then maybe have to lure him back down into the basement. But in my eyes, in my mind, I think that we should have to lure him down to the parts and service room. Mostly because Vanessa told us to come to the main stage once we got into the elevator when trying to escape after you get Roxy's eyes. But if you listen to Vanessa, then go check the stage. There's nothing there for you. It just seems to be a time waster so that Moondrop has a better chance of getting you. But in my eyes, this seems like more of a game mechanic thing than an in-game thing. Like in the game universe, all he would need to do to catch you is just make it to you instead of waiting until it's exactly 1 hour. So there would have to be some reason that she called you there in the first place, right? Well, maybe it's because that's where Burntrap was, and now we gotta bring him down to parts and service to dismantle him and end his spree for good. Maybe we can get some main antagonist action where the animatronics roaming the PizzaPlex are instead replaced with the main villains of Burntrap and Vanny. Kind of like Nightmare Fredbear, Nightmare, or Nightmarion style, since those characters also replaced all of the villains in FNAF 4 when they were out. This would definitely make Vanny and Burntrap seem more powerful and important than the other animatronics, especially if this only happened once we destroyed all three, since then we would assume that they were kind of tossed aside or forgotten since they didn't really work anymore. And I think that this would also help Burntrap be more menacing, because honestly, looking at him, this is the scariest design for Afton yet. This is the most terrifying version of Springtrap that we have ever had, and we don't actually have to or get to interact with him directly. We don't have a reason to really be scared of him. He doesn't chase us, he doesn't have any real power over us, we burn him from a distance through monitors while pressing buttons, and he only tries to take control over Freddy instead of coming after us, which is what helped us think of this character as a waste. But having him chase us around the PizzaPlex would be an excellent way of making him more unique and terrifying, especially if periodically he would cause us to be forced out of Freddy while trying to take him over, and the only way that we could save Freddy would be maybe to press another button at a save station, or maybe try to activate a save station or something like that. Something that could possibly jam Afton's frequency or signal or something along those lines. Making Afton a bigger villain would definitely be a better way to go in my eyes, because this man was underused and really kind of wasted in this way. Especially if they do decide to kill him off permanently, since now he's just sentient code after having his soul burnt out of FNAF 6's fire. But having him chase us around the PizzaPlex and making the Freddy mech useless at times, and really just being a horrifying antagonist, would really help sell how terrifying this version was intended to be, and something I feel should have been in the base game, since, you know, he's the most iconic character in the entirety of the FNAF series, you know, purple guy, the main killer, something that was teased in the very first trailer and then yet maybe had 5 minutes of screen time, unless you're bad at the game like I am, and then in that case he had like 30 minutes to an hour of screen time. And don't even get me started on how horrible his death was, if that was even a death. Killing this man off screen is probably the rudest thing I think Scott could do to me. Like, I want to see this man, and this man being William, die. I want to be the one who causes it. I want to see the light leave his eyes. I want to see that last bit of code float into the air with his demonic purple eyes and then dissipate. Okay, I want to watch him suffer. It's the least that he deserves. Plus, with Burntrap and Vanny roaming the PizzaPlex, maybe we could actually figure out what happened to those other missing kids that potentially drew us to the PizzaPlex to begin with. I mean, Vanny says in the first trailer that they're supposed to be our friends, right? Like, I don't know, maybe she got to Gregory's orphanage, or like kind of like raided it with a bunch of animatronics. Man, like a World of Warcraft raid, but with animatronics. I don't know. Like, maybe this is the way that Vanny's room above Phaser Blast would be open for closer inspection without the Phaser Blast ending button. Maybe there's an additional secret room or duffel bag or like a present with some story lore that points to what really happened to those kids, and then we can actually go and try and figure it out. If they were killed maybe, or kidnapped, or used to fuel Afton. I mean, this could be a really good way for the story to really establish itself, since, you know, the game was released unfinished despite being a couple of years late. Maybe something like this was always intended, but since there were so many delays, we had to deal with an underused and hardly terrifying antagonist despite the ability to make him so much more. But then again, maybe I'm just enthusiastic and expecting too much from these games, which may or may not be a bad thing. Recently, there have been several ideas of various security breach DLC. Some of them good, some of them not so good. However, while yes, something like the Choose Your Guardian DLC would be cool, that's not the only option. So today, we discuss whether or not we're likely to see the appearance of Glamrock Bonnie in the FNAF Security Breach DLC. Whatever the DLC ends up being. So, let's do it. Firstly, based off of what we're expressly told in-game, it could actually be possible. All we really know is that Bonnie ended up going into Monty Golf around 4 AM, and then that was the last place he was seen. Quote from the duffel bag, security report, 12:24 AM. Bonnie is seen leaving his green room in Rockstar Row heading east towards the atrium. 2:40 AM, Bonnie enters the East Arcade. 4:12 AM, Bonnie enters Monty Golf. That's the last of a repaired Bonnie that we ended up seeing, since in another bag we learned, quote, with Bonnie out of commission, we are making Monty the new bass player. Parts and service has already done the proper adjustments. This could be a good thing. Monty could be even more popular than Bonnie. Which, in combination to the fact that Bonnie was last seen in Monty Golf, suggests that Monty is the culprit behind Bonnie's destruction. Which is odd, in my opinion, because like we know Monty loves smashing things, so like that's not the weird part about this. My thought is, where was Monty chilling before he moved into Rockstar Row? Like, we don't see any real living quarters in Monty Golf, and the only other animatronics that we see outside of the core 4 is the daycare attendant, who has his own room above the ball pit. So, where could Monty have been staying if not in Rockstar Row? Anyway, if Monty is to blame for the destruction of Bonnie, we could see Bonnie come back in the DLC. But unfortunately, it wouldn't be really to get revenge on Monty, since we see that Monty does indeed face justice. At least, justice if he was guilty for the crimes. And if not, then it was just destruction. There is another theory, however, that could counter this point if it's true. The idea that Glamrock Bonnie's endo was used to create the new body that Afton inhabits in the true ending, Burntrap. Now, we've covered this in another video, link to that is in the iCard, but in that video we came to the conclusion that the entire endo wasn't used, since the shoulders on Burntrap aren't wide enough compared to the male Glamrock endos. And the fact that Afton's muscle fibers, or nerves, again, still not quite sure what they are still connected, would prove that it's the old suit. But there are sections where the fibers are blocked, like on the left foot and left arm. Both things that he was missing, or were more damaged at the time, while in his scrap trap form, seemingly suggesting that perhaps these specific parts came from Glamrock Bonnie instead of the whole endoskeleton. Maybe they were the only parts that they could use after Monty had his fun, maybe they cut Monty off from destroying the rest of him, hence why he starts smashing his green room. We're not sure, and frankly the latter is just speculation, but it's still interesting. Originally, I was against the whole Glamrock Bonnie endoskeleton thing because, well, frankly, the body in the suit kind of disproved it for me. But I think I might have found a way to make it work. Like I said, looking at the model, I'm still not 100% sure. But if this was the Glamrock Bonnie endo, again, it would need to have broader shoulders, and actually it would need to be shorter. Unless they're like using the female endo for Bonnie, which wouldn't really make sense, so I don't think that they would, especially if they're gonna give Bonnie shoulder pads. But I mean, like, even if we scale them so they're the same height, the endos, when posed the same way, and I'm comparing to like an actual endo, not the Glamrock Bonnie fan art, they still don't line up. And I mean, there are similarities between the two, of course, but there aren't enough where I can even call this above 50%. There are also issues of, again, the muscles being woven throughout the body. If it was just the head, I would understand, since they could have just put the old head on a new endo body, but with the muscles throughout the rest of the endo, that's too intricate to have been placed there. Even if they were, they would be dangling. They would just be hanging out, unless they had been stuck there, like, with super glue. Because, like, they were deep in there, because, you know, he was shoved full of machine parts. So yeah, if Afton was going to transfer his head to a new endo, it wouldn't come with the rest of the body bits. So yeah, I'm gonna go with they added the arm and the leg on after the fact. But what would that mean for Glamrock Bonnie? Well, it would mean that if decommissioning Bonnie was a part of Vanny's plan to resurrect Afton, there would really be no Bonnie available that you could bring back, since he would really just be decommissioned. And while the other animatronics do come back, losing a leg and an arm is worse than your legs, your eyes, or just being smashed, since he wouldn't really be able to hop around on one leg despite being a bunny, and since he only had one arm, he wouldn't really be able to crawl like Monty does. So, I mean, I suppose the DLC could instead just be replacing Monty with Glamrock Bonnie, but that's achievable with mods, so there isn't really a point to making that a paid DLC, since we would all just opt into modding the game for that experience. Plus, certainly the model they use for Bonnie wouldn't end up being the one added to the mod instead of the current one. So at this point, we'd need a solid DLC to actually make it worth it. With that being said, however, Bonnie being decommissioned might actually impact his presence in the game, but not to this story, since the DLC could be, like I've suggested before in other videos, a series of missions that involve us investigating his disappearance, possibly as a favor to Freddy, since he really seemed to miss Bonnie. Like, he was pretty sad when he was saying that there's no Bunny in this PizzaPlex, not anymore. That was my Freddy impression. Maybe it would even be because Freddy was already investigating it or something like that, saying that he knows Monty's been giving him side-eye and wanted to know if that Monty would be coming after Freddy next, since after all, Monty is stronger than Freddy, at least until we break Monty's brains in with a giant bucket filled with balls, which is a total hazard, by the way. I mean, like, come on. The giant bucket that we use to crush Monty is such a issue for health and safety for both employees and for customers. Because, like, if a 6-year-old kid with a 4-year-old's body can use it to destroy an animatronic, how safe is it going to be for literally anyone else? Like, what's the point of the bucket anyway? Like, is it supposed to contain water? Because, like, when it falls on Monty, it breaks the catwalk that we're on. And honestly, water, especially in that quantity, is going to be a lot heavier than some ball pit balls filled with air. Seriously, who the living hell thought that this was going to be a good idea? Or like, how have they not gotten fined for it yet? Or like, how have they not fixed it if they have gotten fined? Yeah, there are guardrails on the catwalk, but that doesn't matter if there's a giant bucket that can destroy the catwalk that you're standing on and then cause you to fall to your death. Especially when falling that distance just like severed Monty's legs from his torso. Anyway, sorry, rant aside, maybe once Freddy has Monty's hands, we're able to investigate the rest of what happened to Bonnie. Maybe we get into Monty's green room and then kind of like suss out what went wrong. And no, that was not an Among Us joke, despite me constantly making Among Us jokes about this game because Gregory is sus, he vented. But like, maybe in the end, we would find Bonnie's casing with a missing arm and a missing leg, and then we would know for certain that I'm right. Now, do I think that this is going to happen? Really? I'm not sure. Like, a lot of people seemingly want to see Bonnie in this game, so much so that they are replacing Monty using mods. But also, the idea for the Choose Your Guardian DLC is also very popular, and perhaps even more popular than the others. However, since we know DLCs to be canon add-ons, I'm guessing that a Bonnie investigation would be more likely than switching up the robot who protects us, since honestly, the whole Bonnie thing has less lore implications in the long run. Having someone other than Freddy protect us just seems like it would be too messy, especially with the fact that we would have to steal the other bits from the animatronics, and if we pick Roxy, then we have her eyes the entire game, which is kind of cheating. But like, you know, you get it? You do understand what I mean here? Like, I like the idea, but it's probably just gonna have to be a mod instead of actual canon DLC, okay? I hate to say it, even though I say it every time I talk about this mod. The most popular FNAF DLC concept at the moment seems to be the Choose Your Guardian DLC. The idea behind this, brought to us by Reddit user space_bear, was that you'd play through the story of Security Breach again, but this time choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. I'm assuming you could also choose Glamrock Freddy again, just because. While most of the game would remain the same if you were with Monty, with the mechanics of like hiding inside the chest cavity anyway, I'm sure that there would be some issues if it came to Roxy or Chica, which would result in them having to carry you onto their back. In the comments, it was also suggested that this could be used as a way to make the animatronics faster, but you wouldn't be safe from the other animatronics since they could still see you, because you know, you're on their shoulders. But how could these characters work if this was actually put into the game? That's what we're exploring today. Let's do it. Now, as I just mentioned, Roxy's body isn't really all that big. And while Gregory is able to fit his entire body in a hole that is just over 14 inches tall in Glamrock Freddy, I still don't know how that works, I don't think that he'd be able to fit himself inside of Roxy's tiny torso. But considering how she's the fastest animatronic, sprinting at you when she sees you or even hears you after her destruction, it's safe to say that maybe the mechanic would instead be riding on her shoulders, which would make for better movement speed since she wouldn't have to worry about crushing you while you're inside, but also adding more vulnerability since the other animatronics would be able to see you on her and would follow. This would also make for way too much fan art of Gregory riding Roxy, more than there already is, honestly. You search up Glamrock and you see get your glam rocks off, and I wish I was kidding. But the question is, how would Roxy be the one who glitches instead of Freddy? Since the story seems to be, at least currently, that Freddy glitches because the spirit of Michael senses a little brother in Gregory, or maybe even senses that Gregory is his little bro. But assuming that that's just a theory, how would they work this into the actual, like, canon? Like, Gregory can't really hide inside Roxy's stomach after all, so how would he be able to get into her green room? My best guess would be something having to do with her insecurities. Maybe Gregory overheard her and then followed her into the green room to help her. Or maybe since he still needs to be scared of Vanessa, he turns Roxy against Vanessa by saying that the security guard is calling her ugly and saying that Cheek is the prettier animatronic. At least Roxy would be down for destroying the other animatronics in that case, as long as she gets to stay pretty. Monty's gameplay would seemingly be the most like Freddy's, with his wider torso allowing for Gregory to hide inside. But really, I can't see this character being sympathetic towards a kid at all. Like, he's got a very rockstar attitude, and I'd only see him helping Gregory if Gregory was doing stuff for Monty, you know? Like, if Monty was decommissioned or something by Vanessa for destroying his green room, and then Gregory got him working again. That's really the only way I would see these two working together, although this would come with the benefit of Monty's claws already working. Unless for story and gameplay reasons they gave that upgrade to Freddy and said that he needed it to hold on to the microphone better or something, or maybe like turn it on, something like that. Either way, I don't think Monty would mind that, especially since he would get to destroy Freddy. Something that we see from both the van ending and in the last level of Monty Golf, he's more than fine with doing. He might not want to hurt Chica or Roxy because of course every great rock star needs their backup singers, but he would certainly help you with Freddy. Which brings up the problem of where Freddy's boss battle would be. Obviously he'd be the other option between Chica and Roxy, since Roxy's eyes are too overpowered to keep for the long haul. However, Freddy seemingly doesn't have his own area. Chica has the kitchen, which is where her battle takes place because she loves pizza, but she also has Mazer Size. Monty has a mini golf course, and Roxy has a racetrack. So where would Freddy have his boss battle? My best guess would actually be Phaser Blast. Sure, we have to avoid Chica while we play, but assuming we're playing with someone else as our guardian, it would make the most sense for Freddy to be here. Plus, the disassemble ending could be very useful here, since we could use the staff bots Vanny uses in that ending as like our way of destroying Freddy. Maybe he'd end up knocking the remote down or something, and then we could take it and say disassemble Freddy, something like that. That might cause some issues with the whole Chica thing, because then you have to go to the Bonnie Bowl to get the whole Monty mix to crush Chica. But I mean, we could move Monty's mix into Monty Golf, because I feel like that would also make sense. Chica would have to operate in much the same way as Roxy would in this fictional scenario, with us most likely being carried around on her shoulders. And while she may not be as much of a sprinter as Roxy, she can certainly move quickly. If we're giving difficulties to the animatronics, I think that Chica would definitely be like the hard mode out of all of these, since she doesn't really have any unique abilities. Maybe the voice box would be included, but that's something needed to unlock the main boss room, so it would kind of break the story and make it way easier. So maybe instead they could work it out so Freddy would have like a good voice box that we could steal, so that maybe Chica would instead soothe the animatronics, or maybe after we damage him, his voice box goes from good to broken, and then it just screeches like the original. But other than that, I don't really know how this would work. Like, I don't know how this would be different. Like, maybe instead of the whole screeching Chica's ability, she'd be able to move us around in a hiding spot, like if it had wheels, since there are more wheels than doors. I mean, since Chica loves food, seeing her move around garbage or recycling bins may not be an unusual thing. Like, maybe she's just bringing it back to snack on in her green room. So if we were hiding in one of the various bins, maybe while inside we could call her over by pushing Q, and she would end up like grabbing on to the hiding spot and kind of like pushing us around, as long as there was enough space for it. So obviously like smaller ones would be more maneuverable, but also more suspicious. I don't know. Obviously other animatronics could still inspect the hiding spot while she's holding it, and if Vanessa saw her, she would absolutely inspect it. But other than that, I think that the whole mechanic where she pushes you around would be an interesting addition, and it would make Chica a unique guardian and set her apart from Roxy, since at that point they were kind of the same thing. Although it would certainly make things interesting if we're all like, oh yeah, mommy Chica's pushing around Gregory in a stroller. Oh no. Obviously, if this were the actual DLC, Freddy would just end up replacing whatever animatronic was guarding you within the story. So if you chose Roxy, he would have the eyes, etc. Like, they'd have to find a reason for it, but I mean, like, in my humble opinion, it seems wrong if Freddy isn't the one protecting you. But this absolutely would be a fun DLC concept. But hey, if they don't do it, we can always mod it into the game, right? Just like swap a couple models around and then you're good to go. There are also some seriously dope voice actors out there who love the series, and I'm sure they would want to help out. Or maybe some voice actors are looking to add stuff into their portfolio so they can get more work, who would be willing to help. I mean, like, maybe the Freddy voice could be fairly easy. TikTok has been doing it as a trend, and if TikTok can do it, I'm sure we can do it for a mod. So like, maybe it's not such a long shot for a mod after all, like I originally thought. But why am I suggesting a mod though? Because unfortunately, I don't think that this DLC concept is going to get made, okay? I hate to say it, but while it is an incredible and extremely fun idea, the DLC that they do add to this game would most likely be canon to the main series of games. In fact, we haven't had a main series game that wasn't canon. And despite the last DLC claiming it was nothing more than a festive holiday themed add-on with no hidden intent or purpose, we know better than that. And making it so that any of these characters could protect you would probably ruin the story in some aspects and make the next game harder to set up. And while FNAF 4's Halloween DLC at the time that it came out was claimed to be non-canon with the exception of Nightmare Balloon Boy, Nightmare Eon and Nightmare Mangle did end up making it into Ultimate Custom Night, which would mean that Crying Child would have seen them. So eventually, even if they weren't at the time, they did end up becoming canon eventually. Meaning that since this would mess up at least like the story that we understand from the games, with the exception of like the canon ending, but like then again, it's still kind of weird. If we're right or even on the right track about what the story is, I don't think that this would honestly be possible. It would honestly kind of come out of nowhere. It would kind of come out of left field story-wise, unless they end up making it a DLC because everyone is asking for it rather than a DLC that will actually help answer some of the questions we have from the game, since they might want to keep things vague and open-ended for whoever is taking over next. But I guess then again, we'll see when they announce a DLC, if they announce a DLC. I'd still prefer a daytime mode though, or even secure and neutralize from the DLC top 10 list. In at 10, Arcade Conspiracy. That's right, I'm talking about this again. The Arcade Conspiracy gets its name from one of the lore duffel bags that we can find, where we learn that something else seems to be going on here. I'm gonna keep making that joke every single time. Quote from the Arcade Conspiracy note: exit interview. They are working together, the arcades. They're hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time. Then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I am so close. Just one more night. Please. I can save the princess. Now it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games. However, it doesn't seem like we have to glitch out those arcade cabinets in order to get their ending. We just have to beat them in order from 1 to 3, and then boom, we save Vanny. So what could this really mean? Well, there are 3 other arcade machines that seem to be having mysterious glitches, or there's something wrong with them as well. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the secret room in the theater, Chica's Feeding Frenzy, which won't turn off even when unplugged, that you're supposed to be able to find in the bakery, and the Monty Golf A arcade game that is, according to its duffel bag, shouldn't be in the mini golf area but somehow is. However, while you can play both Balloon Boy World and the Monty Golf game, Chica's Feeding Frenzy isn't actually playable. You can only access it using a mod menu that lets you cheat it in from the main menu. So adding in this arcade cabinet could mean that there's something bigger going on here than a simple DLC, which honestly I would love. And currently my my high score is still 14 for Monty Golf, where the lowest score is 13, so still feel pretty good about that. In at 9, Foxy's return. Foxy was also missing along with Bonnie this time around. However, with the inclusion of Roxy, who seems to be like the Sephora version of Foxy, we didn't really seem to miss them all that much, especially since Roxy also runs hella fast, basically just being a gender-swapped form of the lovable Fox. However, seeing Foxy make a triumphant return could be an interesting concept for a DLC. Maybe he was having a form of like lover's spat with Roxy, and then that's why she keeps telling herself that she's beautiful and the best because Foxy broke her heart or something. I don't know. I don't think that they would do that just because of all the horrific fan art that it would generate. Like, yeah, of course there is already fan art about this, but having it confirmed as canon would make everyone go absolutely nuts. God, I'm actually shaking at the thought of that. That sounds like a horrible idea. Anyway, lots of fans have already modded or put Foxy into the game some way or another, so clearly it's an in-demand idea. And honestly, if we did something like the whole missing animatronics showed up for a full-on battle royale with the new ones, I think that would be epic as hell. Freddy Mech for the win. In at 8, VR. I don't care how many of you are against it, I am actively hoping that, like how Help Wanted got a flat screen version, that Security Breach will get a VR version or port or whatever you want to call it. Is it likely? No. Do I want it? Yes. This game was pretty fun normally, okay? But in VR, I think that this would be one of the most intense and exhilarating VR games that I've played. Aside from Blade and Sorcery, but that's just because it awoke something within me. Some of the cutscenes would need to be modified, probably by giving us a third-person perspective instead of the normal first-person. But other than that, I think it would be incredible. Like, imagine playing Phaser Blast in VR against Mommy Chica. Bro, all the Vanny simps would let themselves get killed. And then I could have some fun walking around as Freddy, pretending to be invincible and punching animatronics. I really want this, okay? It may be complicated to do, but I'm willing to wait, damn it. But exploring the PizzaPlex in VR is kind of goals. I know that there are like VR chat and rec room maps that let you do this, but they're not the real deal, man. Combine this with some of the other ideas on this list and oh boy, would it be an amazing experience. Whoa, doggies. I know that they said they wouldn't do it, okay, but Scott says a lot of stuff that he doesn't mean, so. And at 7, secure and neutralize. Now the secure and neutralize concept comes from Knitter user the Silver Sea, and how they describe it is basically a pacifist route, where instead of playing through the story and destroying the other animatronics, you'd instead be able to befriend them and remove them from the game, basically. At certain points in the animatronic boss fights, you'd be able to choose whether or not you commit to the destruction of the animatronic, and if you choose not to, the pacifist route would start. After choosing not to kill, you'd strategize about how to take the animatronic down, which would already be determined in the story, but like for story purposes you'd have to figure it out. Maybe Freddy would offer a suggestion. Then you'd remove the CPU that Afton is using to control the animatronic out of their back, and the animatronic would reboot. After rebooting, they'd have no memory of what happened, and then you'd be able to lead them back to Rockstar Row and put them in their changing station or green room for the rest of the game. This concept is actually pretty interesting, and if you want to read more about it and get more in detail that I can't actually get into in this video because it's a top 10, the link for this will be in the description if I can remember. If not, yell at me in the comments. And at 6, Daycare Redo. The Daycare Redo DLC concept comes to us from FNAF wiki user Glitched Morals, saying that they came up with a side quest with benefits called the Daycare Redo. Quote from the post, here's how it works. Instead of being pushed out of the slide when attempting to go back into the daycare after being banned, there is an option to talk to the son. Gregory can apologize for breaking the rules and ask if there is anything that he can do to make it up to him. Son will send Gregory on a few missions to do certain things, like bring back a certain item to him or clean up the play structures that he knocked down. They will need access to a cleaning or janitor pass, which can be obtained from a present box. And if Gregory does all of these missions, he will have Son's trust back, which will result in a few benefits. He will have full access to the daycare again, which will have extra secrets and collectibles to actually have the full access be worth it. Play structures are now new hiding spots for hiding from animatronics. You'll have access to a new room that is the daycare storage room. In that room is extra structures and toys that are found in the daycare. Presents and duffel bags will also be in this room. Son will give Gregory a daycare night pass, which will result in the moon no longer chasing Gregory anymore even when the lights are off. And Son can be interactable, and with him Gregory can watch different movies in the fast theater, play hide and seek, and other mini games. Honestly, this seems like a pretty solid idea, and actually a pretty interesting one, so good job, Glitched Morals. The link to this post will also be in the description, if I can remember. Halfway through into number 5, multiplayer. Now, with a working PizzaPlex, there comes the idea that doing this with friends would be an amazing time. And honestly, this is one of the things we've been wanting for ages. When a multiplayer FNAF didn't really make sense before, a working PizzaPlex would make the most sense. Being able to explore the PizzaPlex during the day with friends and even random people online would be awesome. And honestly, if this isn't in a FNAF DLC, I'm sure someone's going to make this happen in VR chat or Rec Room or something like that. I mean, like, there's already a mod, but that's where you play as animatronics, and I just want a whole load of kids running around the PizzaPlex, you know, being able to play all the games. However, if this was in the real FNAF game, I think it would be the most beneficial. However, VR chat is a free game that you don't need VR to play, despite what the name would suggest, so it would be better for fans, unless this came out as like a free DLC of some sort. Which, honestly, considering how the game was released unfinished, a lot. A DLC that fixed things and then actually gives us multiplayer would actually be nice if it was free, especially if it's just fixing issues, okay? Anyway, a multiplayer PizzaPlex would be perfect. And at 4, daytime mode. Being able to explore the PizzaPlex during the day is something that I think we can all agree we'd love to see. Being able to actually play these games without the ominous threat of death would be a great addition to this game. I want to play laser tag without having to worry about Chica chasing me, okay? Unless she's chasing me in a romantic way because someone wanting me that bad is kind of goals. But for real, the ability to just mess around the PizzaPlex during the day would certainly be fun. No restrictions, just full passes or whatever. Or maybe we have to earn tickets to pay for the passes by playing the various arcade games. I think that would be pretty damn cool. Combine this with the multiplayer mode and this would be crazy. Although I guess multiplayer mode would kind of imply that it's during the day since the story doesn't really allow for multiplayer. So let's just assume the daytime mode would just be you on your own. The single player daytime experience, which sounds like a really bad sitcom. Like, not one that's so bad it's good, but just like a bad sitcom. mostly because of the name. Getting close to the end, in number 3, Burntrap. With everything that was left up in the air about Burntrap's ending, us being unsure whether he's actually dead or if the blob decided to save him, getting to see more of Burntrap or even more of Burntrap's story, maybe some explanations as to what happened in between the games, or maybe even some potential backstory to the character of William Afton, would surely be greatly appreciated by the community. If there's anything that I've learned by talking about this series every day for a year, the community doesn't like talking about any theory that isn't what they've already believed to be true, and they'll consider these theories canon and proven despite them not actually being confirmed. So, literally anything getting confirmed about this character would be a win in my eyes, especially if we finally get to see William officially die on screen. You have no idea how much I would love to watch William finally kick that sweet, sweet bucket on screen. Huh. Better than any orange YouTube video ever. But ultimately, in at number 2, Inspector Gregory. Bonnie was missing from security breach, having been destroyed most likely by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with the security breach lineup would certainly be an interesting mission. If we were meant to truly investigate this, turning the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would be a really compelling and fun storyline. And from what I've seen, we all want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him. Considering the dialogue from the first recharge station at least, when Gregory asks about Vanny, and Freddy says, "There is no bunny in this PizzaPlex, not anymore," in a very somber way. Plus, I mean, I've seen enough animatronic alligator thirst traps on TikTok that I kind of want Monty gone. Yes, it was only the one thirst trap, but it was for Monty, okay? It's rough, man. Well, okay, there was only one for the actual animatronic. There was more for cosplays of the animatronic, but dear God. And finally, in at number 1, Choose Your Guardian. I'm pretty sure you all wanted this, and I'm pretty sure it's the thumbnail for this video. Currently, the Choose Your Guardian concept is the most popular idea for a security breach DLC. Well, at least from ideas that came from fans. The idea behind this was that you'd play through the story again, but this time you'd choose which animatronic would come to defend you instead of Glamrock Freddy. The post on Reddit by user SpaceBear suggested Chica and Roxy, with Roxy carrying you instead of hiding inside her stomach. However, unfortunately, I don't think that this idea is very likely. Despite jokes in the Help Wanted DLC that the DLC was not a canon addition to the game and it had no hidden intent or purpose, this was not the case. We know that the DLC is canon and had hidden intent and purpose. However, this DLC, the Choose Your Guardian DLC, would cause too much chaos to the story to actually work well. It would just make too many things confusing, and there is no way that they would make a non-canon DLC in my mind. But I do like this idea, and I think that it should be a mod. We can probably make it work in some way, I'm certain of it. You'd need the voice lines, but I'm pretty sure there are some fans that would be able to recreate the voice for the mod. Getting the actual voice actors would probably be a little too expensive for a mod, but yeah, unfortunately I don't think this is very likely, but hey, maybe it's a good mod. In its end, multiplayer. Now, with a working PizzaPlex, there comes the idea that doing this with friends would be an amazing time. And honestly, this is one of the things we've been wanting for ages. While a multiplayer FNAF didn't really make sense before, with a working PizzaPlex, it would make the most sense. Being able to explore the PizzaPlex during the day with friends and even random people online would be awesome. And honestly, if it isn't in a FNAF DLC, I'm sure someone is going to make this happen in VR chat or Rec Room or something like that. However, if this was in a real FNAF game, I think it would be the most benefit. Even need VR to play in, despite what the name of the game would suggest. So it would be better for fans, unless this came out as a free DLC of some sort. Which honestly, considering how the game was released unfinished from what I've seen and heard online, a DLC that actually fixed things and gives us the rest of the game better be free. It better just be an update or something. Still, multiplayer PizzaPlex would be perfect. In at 9, mini-games. I think that while yes, mini-games in the context of this game don't really make sense, a separate area that could perhaps take place before the main game, during that day, would be interesting. Where we explore the PizzaPlex while it's in day mode, and something like that would be really cool. Being able to actually see the entire PizzaPlex without all those damn security bots and, the risk of death. And we'd be able to play all the various minigames too. We could play the golf and laser tag and bowling and do whatever we actually wanted to do. It would be incredibly fun, and honestly, combine this with the next number and we'd have one hell of a game. Plus, playing Gator Golf on an arcade machine is totally different than playing golf on the actual Monty course. I don't think the two courses are the same, which is unfortunate because the one in the actual Monty Golf area looks awesome. Kind of want that in real life, if I'm being honest. Is there like one of those like golf with friends? Is there like a custom map that is the Monty Gator Golf from the PizzaPlex? Because I'd play that. I don't have any friends. In a date, achievements. Now don't get me wrong, this game has plenty of achievements, and some pretty damn difficult ones at that. But seeing some more wouldn't be a horrible idea. I mean, it would give achievement hunters and completionists more to do, and it would give the YouTubers who've already done the game to death more to play. Which, let's face it, it will help everyone in the long run. Okay, creators will have more content to film, Scott will have more eyes on the series for whoever's taking over next, and fans will have something to watch while we just try to ignore the millions of different tasks that we actually have to do instead of watching YouTube. Plus, it'll make it worth the $50 price tag even more. I feel like it's basically a guarantee that if we do get some form of DLC that will be adding content, we'll also be getting new achievements, because like it's basically impossible to avoid that unless this DLC is just fixing what's broken and not actually anything new. Hopefully we get something new along with some bug fixes, but maybe they're taking the Skyrim approach to this so that 10 years from now they can release a FNAF Security Breach Anniversary Edition while they take 25 years to make the next FNAF game. I'm not salty at all. And it's 7 fixes. Okay, I think it's safe to say that everyone who has played this game, either online or on their own, has experienced some form of glitch. Or most likely, multiple glitches. Markiplier experienced so many that there's actually a compilation of every time he ran into one. MapHat ran into glitches, EddieVR and Juicy ran into glitches, even I did. I ended up glitching myself back into the daycare for crying out loud. Not even intentionally. And not to mention the whole a load of areas don't like to load. And the animatronic AI, let's face it, isn't the best. So I think we're due for some bug fixes. And while they may have updated things a bit to improve the performance, I just played it last week and had some serious issues. So I think that if we're getting a DLC, especially one we may have to pay for, that we are going to need some bug fixes. Although there is no way that we should actually have to pay for these bug fixes. Hell, we shouldn't even have to pay for a DLC if it's just putting the rest of the originally intended game into our game. But I have a feeling that we are going to have to pay for that. And at 6, new ending. While yes, we already do have a canon ending to the game, I feel like there are other things going on, alright? Having a canon ending doesn't discount additional endings from being added, since they could help indicate to us what's going on in this game, or give us something else that could just be a fun thing to achieve, like a joke ending of sorts that gives us something to laugh about. Like if we got an ending that ended up just being the ending from FNAF 1, or Henry's speech from FNAF 6, just something fun that would also make sense, since if it doesn't, we all know for a fact that we would go absolutely ballistic and tear it to shreds. Or maybe we could get an ending where William Afton actually dies, even if it's not the canon one, so I can finally sleep soundly at night. Like, they have the death animations, right? Like, might as well put them to good use. Plus, him dying could be like my alarm in the morning, or like the lullaby I play to fall asleep, as long as it's not a jump scare noise. Because waking up to a jump scare may be a good way to make sure that you don't go back to sleep, but I'm kind of off the whole self-torture thing for the sake of everyone else. Yeah, been there, done that, no thanks. Halfway through, and at number 5, confirmation. Now, we have had a lot of theories about the various aspects of this game, but with all the conflicts, we know that there isn't really going to be a way to solve this without more information. So, what's really the deal going on here, alright? That question is preferably going to be answered if we get a DLC. I mean, Scott himself said that he likes to explain any misconceptions with games in the next one. He did with FNAF 4's date and the sister location code of 1983, and with FNAF VR's DLC to show that Glitchtrap was intended to be William with the purple car in the FNAF 4 house. So, we could reasonably see some confirmation of some ideas in a Security Breach DLC. Preferably the question of what's the relationship between Vanessa and Gregory, or if Gregory is meant to be a robot and or crying child. Those are probably some of the biggest questions that we really have and would help us solve some of the other issues. Because let's face it, how William came back yet again is of little consequence, and so are various other questions. The biggest ones that we have are about the pro and antagonists. Plus, I just want to be able to say that I've been calling Gregory being a robot for years. Actually, no, it's more like a year. Ever since the Funko statue came up. Okay, I called it. In at 4, Bonnie. Bonnie was missing from security breach, having been destroyed most likely by Monty, but perhaps getting to investigate Bonnie's disappearance and being able to change how things go with the security breach lineup would certainly be an interesting mission. If we were meant to like truly investigate it, that is, like turn the DLC into a bit of a detective game, I think that would really be a compelling and fun storyline. And from what I've seen, we all just want justice for Bonnie, especially since we want Papa Freddy to be reunited with Bonnie since he seemingly really misses him, considering the dialogue from the first recharge station, when Gregory asks about Vanny and Freddy says, "There is no bunny at this PizzaPlex, not anymore," in a very somber way. Plus, like I've seen enough animatronic alligator thirst traps on TikTok that I kinda want Monty gone at this point. Like, yes, it was only the one thirst trap, okay, but it was for Monty! That's rough, man, I don't need that, one is too many. Why do we live in a world where animatronic alligator thirst trap makes sense? Getting close to the end in number 3, post-game saving. Please, for the love of God, let us save the damn game after we beat it. Especially if the DLC has some decent story to it that involves us probably dying a bunch. Because I would rather not have to go through the whole 8-hour game again just to be able to play the DLC and be able to save. That's kind of insane. This is one of my biggest issues with the game. I get that it was for balancing purposes, but for real, this is something that needs to change. Freddy's power isn't even that good, so that alone can balance the whole he can see everything issue. Because his battery, even with the 2 upgrades, is trash. So for the love of God, please update the game to allow us to save or make it a feature in the new DLC. Even if it's like an option that we can enable in the menu or settings or something so that it can be our decision. Because I'm horrible at games, so I need to save. Especially since we can't save anywhere. Okay, we have to go to specific places to save, so that helps balance it too. Please. Penultimately, in at number 2, Chica's Feeding Frenzy. The arcade conspiracy gets its name from one of the duffel bags that you can find where we learn about something else that seems to be going on here. Quote from this arcade conspiracy note. Exit interview. They're working together. The arcades. They're hiding something. The glitches. Glitch them all at the same time, then the princess will recognize me. She's testing me. I am not yet worthy. The others are protecting it. Let me stay. I am so close. Just one more night, please. I can save the princess. Now it's clear that this seems to be referring to the Princess Quest games, however it doesn't seem like we have to glitch the Princess Quest games in order to win. We just have to beat them in order from 1 to 3 and then boom, we save Vanny. So what could this mean? Well, there are 3 other arcade machines that seem to be having mysterious glitches as well. The Balloon Boy World game that you can find in the theater, well in a secret room in the theater, Chica's Feeding Frenzy which won't turn off even when unplugged that you can find in the bakery, and Monty Golf A arcade that according to its duffel bag shouldn't be in the mini golf area, but is. However, while you can play both Balloon Boy World and the Monty Golf game, Chica's Feeding Frenzy isn't an arcade cabinet. You can only access it using a mod that lets you cheat it in from the main menu. So adding this to the game could mean that there's something bigger going on than a simple DLC, which I would love. And finally, in at number 1, level 10 security access. Now, the highest level of security access that you can get is level 8. This just requires you to do every one of the little security room minigames. However, with level 8 being the highest you can actually achieve, it begs the question, why are there doors with level 10 security? Because if it's impossible to achieve, what's the point of giving them a security level at all? There are plenty of other doors in the game that are locked or out of order that don't open at all. So why not just make the doors that would have been level 10 just unopenable, okay? That seems more efficient to me. I don't have to walk up and get a giant thing on my screen that says level 10 access required. But, like, the thing is, they could be saving these areas for a potential DLC that would end up having to add 2 more security passes. Since if you actually end up no-clipping through the doors with level 10 access, there is nothing behind them at all. It would be nice to get some additional areas in a DLC, and like, a separate area seems a bit unrealistic. This isn't Skyrim where you can add like a whole new world space or a dimension, so these level 10 areas would give us that extra sense of new content while also expanding the PizzaPlex in a reasonable way. We'd need 2 more security minigames though, which would have to be in additional areas, but I mean, hey, I'm willing to take that. And at 10, repaired animatronics. Considering how the whole point of the game was to destroy these animatronics so that we'd end up wasting enough time for the doors to open, repairing the animatronics in this DLC for whatever reason it might be would be a huge disservice to the game. Like, yeah, you might need them for something, but if that's the case, you shouldn't have to have them repaired. Plenty of different sections in the game use both destroyed and repaired animatronics depending on how you've completed the story. If you destroyed Chica and then go to Phaser Blast after the ending, you can end up having to dance around a destroyed Chica. So forcing repairs on these animatronics just destroys what we spent the entire game doing. We did it illegally, but also considering how the game is past 6 AM and will always be 6 AM no matter how long you play at that point, you can be fairly certain that they would not be able to repair the animatronics in time. And at 9, meaningless collectibles. While yes, the collectibles are fun things that you can go around and steal all over the PizzaPlex, I think that a DLC adding more collectibles that don't have any significance is a pretty bad idea. There are plenty of difficult to find collectibles already, so if you're to make more in a DLC, I think that they should actually have some form of meaning with those collectibles. Whether they're references or Easter eggs, it doesn't really matter, but we definitely need some form of meaning because getting all the normal collectibles that in reality are stealables, if you ask me, is already quite the task, especially if you keep the whole like you're unable to save after getting Roxy's eyes thing, because that is just some serious bad juju if you ask me, although nobody really has asked me. We all hate the mechanic, alright? And at 8, bug fixes. Okay, now don't get me wrong, this game is in dire need of some serious bug fixes, but I, along with I'm sure everyone else, would be absolutely furious if those bug fixes came in the form of a DLC. At least if the DLC is a separate purchase that we have to make like the Help Wanted DLC was. If I have to pay for bug fixes that I should have already had, there's going to be a problem, because if a game is released unfinished, there needs to be a remedy to that in the form of updates. Easy updates that fix the major issues with the game, like I don't know, falling through the world. And if there is a paywall to get those updates, I think I know a couple of websites that can help me get around that, because in all honesty, that's incredibly messed up if the bug fixes will only be in the DLC. But I don't think Steelwood would do that. I just get worried since they're still working on updates but also still talking DLC. And at 7, Daycare. The Moondrop Daycare section was certainly a great bit of fun, despite the constant darkness and the demon chasing you. It was strangely like my mind, actually. However, while this section was certainly fun and one of the best moments of the game, I don't really want to repeat it. It took me so long to do properly the first time, so any reason to have to go back into the daycare, whether it be because we dropped something or whatever other reason they'd come up with, I don't want to do it. Do not send me back to the goddamn daycare, or I swear to God. Like, it was fun the first time, but I'd rather not spend another 3 hours nearly ripping my dick off trying to find another generator. I don't want to deal with the daycare attendant at all, if that's possible. Just the fact that the first line as Moondrop is naughty naughty boy, it puts me on edge, especially for a kid who's like the size of a 4-year-old. Not in real life. I'm taller than a 4-year-old, I hope. Like, okay, look, it's just setting off all kinds of radars, alright? And at 6, post-credits. While yes, I said another ending would be nice in another video, having any post-credit scenes should really be saved for the next full game, especially since we don't know where the next IP owner will be going with this series. So I'd like to leave the endings where they are, and any DLC should take place before the game starts or after 6 AM hits, since 6 AM seems to be the most logical time for any serious change to happen, since employees would be starting to come back and prepare for the day. So things like additional areas or attractions opening would make sense. Basically, the daytime protocols would activate. Or it could be like a DLC starts if you go to the main stage when Vanessa asks you to when you're trying to leave. When you're trying to get to the main doors while the daycare attendant's chasing you and she says, oh, come to the main stage. Yeah, that could do that. And it could start like a whole new story kind of mission with, wait for it, autosaves. That would be amazing. Someone in a recent video also mentioned that there's unused Freddy voice lines that say that the stations got hacked. However, firstly, that means nothing since it's unused, therefore it's not canon. Secondly, it still makes no sense, because if he's able to escape, why have the saved stations? Like, why hack them at all? It doesn't really make sense unless you want to screw with the business, since in the world of the game, the save stations do nothing for Gregory. They only help us in the game sense. Do you get it? Halfway through into number 5, post-game. Honestly, I'm fine with the DLC taking place post-game, and it would make the most sense. However, I don't want to see a post-game DLC where you can't save the entire time. And that's what I fear the most when it comes to Security Breach, okay? If we're getting a whole new section of the game, basically a new game in and of itself, we'd better be able to save throughout it, which Steel Wool might see as actually compromising the intended difficulty of the post-game, so I don't know what they're going to do. I had to put it out there again. If this is going to be some post-game DLC, you need to make sure that saving is allowed, even if the save spots are only available like in the sections pertaining to the DLC while the DLC is active or something like that, because otherwise it's going to be too much of a pain in the ass to actually get through. And I don't know how many people will actually want to play it if it's that way. Rather, they'd probably end up just wanting to watch someone else play it, which is fine if the person you're watching play it is me. And 4 questions. When we get this DLC, if they do end up making one at least, I don't want to be left with more questions than we had at the end of the main game, alright? Scott loves to clear things up from previous games with the next one, and a DLC is a perfect way to do this. And he did this with FNAF VR and its Curse of Dreadbear DLC, with confirming that Glitch Trap was meant to be acted. So, if we come out of this DLC with more questions than answers, while in typical FNAF fashion, I'm still not going to be a happy overnight camper. Like, bro, can you just like throw us a bone once and tell us like one of the big mysteries we have, or give us answers for that, like how Gregory and Vanessa know each other seemingly, or if Gregory is a robot, or who Client 46 is. Please, just give me that instead of questions, and I'll be happy. Getting close to the end, and at number 3, time travel. Seeing a giant ball pit for the first time in an actual FNAF game that wasn't when you had to buy it interests me, alright? Specifically because of the Fazbear Frights books and Into the Pit, and the story of the same name. Since in that story we see Oswald, who could travel between 2011 and 1985 by jumping into a ball pit in his local pizzeria that actually used to be a Fazbear joint. And honestly, that book being released and then the ball pit appearing in the FNAF game does not seem like a coincidence. So, it could be possible that we see time travel in this DLC, especially if they wanted to relate it back to the books and the Fazbear Frights books. However, this would be an absolutely terrible idea. Okay, I have once said that this could be a great way to change between in-game times. However, the whole day and night mechanic isn't a thing in the game. So unless they introduce that with this time-traveling ball pit, or one of the ball pits being able to time travel, it would be a bit much. And honestly, it would probably ruin the DLC, if that's a thing. So if you're gonna make like a day as well as a night, then okay, I'll allow it, but if you're not introducing that, there's no point in a time-traveling ball pit. And ultimately, in at number 2, more PizzaPlex. Okay, so the PizzaPlex is already pretty damn big. It's confusing to get the places you need to go. There are a couple shortcuts, but it is still difficult to get to certain places. I personally end up going probably the most complicated ways to get back to the main atrium and the like, because I can't be bothered trying to find my way around. But going through the Rockstar row vents to get down to parts and service through Roxy's room is the one way I know works. However, adding more sections to the already confusing PizzaPlex could do more harm than good, and when it comes to something like this, you can't really add a different world space unless you make the story way too complicated. With something like Skyrim, the Forgotten Vale and Solstheim makes sense. However, with FNAF, you can't really have a whole separate area because the whole game takes place in a PizzaPlex and not a specific province of a whole established world. So, more PizzaPlex, while potentially making sense, could end up being counterproductive, especially depending on where we need to go. Maybe use spaces that we've already been in, or add fast travel. And finally, in at number 1, cash grab. The biggest concern that I have with a Security Breach DLC is the possibility of the DLC just really being a cash grab. And while most DLCs could be considered cash grabs, it's really a risk with FNAF in general, especially being new to DLC, like they only have had like one. And like previously mentioned, the confines of the PizzaPlex. If it was something simple like mini games or multiplayer possibilities, I could see it, but the game was already $50. Add on to that the $25 or so that the DLC would run for, and you have the price of some of the highest end games, especially new games. So if there isn't enough content to justify that, I'd be worried about the future for the series, especially since we don't really know the motivations of the person taking over next, because we don't know who is taking over next. It's a slippery slope with a cash grab DLC, and honestly, if there's not enough content or mystery to justify the purchase, I'm probably not going to be purchasing it. despite being a FNAF tuber at this point. Yeah, that's what my life has come to. God damn it.